funny that the Pistons are like coming up against in your article for Spotrac. You have the Pistons listed as like a non-mid-level exception team, swing cap space team with it looks like they could potentially make $27.9 million in cap space available. Can you like maybe explain what those terms mean and like why they're in this situation?
Yeah, and I do want to caveat this was off of the prior cap projection in the last week. They told teams it's probably going to come in $1 million less than where it was. It was at 166. Now it's 165. Not a huge change, but just in case anybody's out there like, hey, this is off by, a little bit, like that's likely the reason. So yeah. So what I do every year when I'm looking at cap space, I look at it at the beginning of the season for the next season. Because rosters are basically locked in. We do an update just ahead of the trade deadline if anything has happened. Then we do a post-trade deadline update, and then I'll do one more before we flip the league years over. So there's always 4 looks at the next year's cap space. And I go through the whole like gamut, right? All right, here's the guaranteed money. Here's what I think they're going to do with options. Here's how I think they'll handle non-guarantees. I use a projection system for wins to get to draft picks so I can have the draft pick cap holds factored in. Then it's all the player cap holds and all that. So with Detroit in kind of a fascinating place, they could very easily sit and say, you know what? We like our guys. We like some of our free agents. So guys like Tobias Harris or Kevin Herter or Paul Reed or Duncan Robinson, not a free agent, but could be. We're going to keep all of them, right? We want to keep all these guys, on the books, and that's what we're going to do. And we're going to re-sign Harris and re-sign maybe Herter and Javonte Green and other guys because we like our team, and we'll go. And if they do that, they're probably in range of the non-taxpayer MLE, which is about call it 15-ish million, because it'll tweak a little bit. So 15 million, that's what they'd have to spend. That's what they could go into the offseason looking for. For us, it's not like, man, we need 7 guys to fill rotation spots. 15 million's a nice, they might need 1 guy, 2 guys. 15 million's a really good chunk of change to have to spend. Or they could say, you know what, we did the Tobias Harris thing. We did this. And they could create about 28 million in cap space. And if they go that route, then it is, all right, who slipped through the cracks in free agency that we want to jump on? Maybe they do feel like, no, we need like 3 dudes that need to be better. So we're going to take this 28 million. And by the way, they would also have the room exception, which is, let me pull that. Give me 1 second. I believe that's about 8 million this coming year. Would be the room exception amount. So, or 9.4. So roughly 9 million. So you'd have that to spend as well. So we spend 28 million in cap space. Then we could spend, another 9 million to go get one other guy. And that's how we go forward. I think what Trajan Langdon has done really well is he's given the Pistons all kinds of optionality in this. Now, let's keep in mind too, all of that starts with Jalen Duren on about a $19.5 million cap hold, because that's what you got to do to keep his bird rights, make him a restricted free agent. Clearly, they're not going to mess around with that, right? You're not going to mess around. He's going to get severely is not the right word. That's a bad connotation. He's going to get way more money than 19.5 million. We know this, right? Well, what the Pistons are going to do, they'll do all their other work first. Then they'll sign Jalen Duren, probably with eyes on whatever direction they go. We're going to do this and stay under the first apron. They may dip into the tax. We'll see. They have paid the tax in the past a handful of times. So maybe that's the way they'll go. But all kinds of optionality. They've got a ton of flexibility, which is a great place to be when you're about to, wrap up the 1 seed in the conference going into the playoffs.
So speaking of flexibility, there's a player that I have a little basketball crush on, and he is a restricted free agent.
Hold on, let me guess. Well, it's not Duren, I don't think.
RFA.
RFA. Restricted free agent this summer.
Mm-hmm.
Can I give a hint? My hint would be, think of the Pistons starting lineup. That's not much of a hint.
And they're not the only team that would want this player. I think it's
gonna guess it's not Benedict Mathurin.
Nope.
After what you said to our Ivy?
Peyton Watson.
It's Peyton Watson.
Yeah, you nailed it, dude.
It's 100% Peyton Watson. So Denver's verging on the second apron. He had a breakout, especially with Aaron Gordon out as long as he was. How able are they to resign him, and what risk does Detroit run by making him an offer?
Yeah, so the first part of your question, the Denver really comes down to, can they get off some other money? Which I think a lot of that's going to be determined by what do the playoffs look like for them. If Cam Johnson and Christian Brown are awesome in the playoffs, then you're probably all right. We'll maybe have to let Peyton Watson go, right? And we'll keep those two guys, and that's how we'll play this. If one of those guys struggles, I could easily see the Nuggets saying, all right, we're going to try to move one of them and keep Peyton Watson in the fold with that. So there is no rule against them keeping Peyton Watson. They absolutely could. They would end up deep into the second apron. And the Nuggets have historically operated as a team that doesn't even really want to be in the luxury tax. Like they have done over the years, really I'm talking in the Jokic era here. They have done multiple trades that were designed around just move that guy out to get us under the luxury tax. They're keeping Watson. It's probably going to be pretty hard, but it may be time to say, all right, we've had all these great years. Maybe they don't want to mess around with the aprons, but maybe we keep Watson and we move like Zeke Naji and a couple of the other smaller salaried guys, get them off the books. And that's how we at least keep under the first apron, but it's going to be tough. For the Pistons, here's your challenge when you play with restricted free agents. And the same thing goes for Jalen Duren for the plus side on the Pistons. You have to kind of give them an offer when free agency opens, June 30th, 6 p.m. Eastern, because you want them to know, hey, I'm serious, and you want to have that out there. But here's the problem. The NBA has this thing called the moratorium. So what happens is the Pistons could say, hey, Peyton Watson, we want to give you, let's just say $30 million, right? Because let's just say that's where they get to. We're going to give you $30 million in first year salary, and that's what we're going to do. And then the Nuggets are going to say, okay, great. Like, we still can match that if we want to. So what the Pistons would have to do is say $30 million. Now they've agreed. Now, basically everything else is on hold, right? Because you can't go do other stuff, and guys aren't going to sit around and wait. You might get a guy might make $4 million. It's like, yeah, I can wait. Like, I'll come back around. But any other big move you're going to make has to wait. You can't actually sign that offer sheet and then deliver the terms to the Nuggets until the moratorium lifts, which will be in the middle of the first week of July, around July 5th or 6th. So what happens is now you've sat on your cap space. Everybody else is agreeing to deals, and you're just kind of stuck. Now, if it goes the way it did last year with the restricted free agents, maybe you can afford to say, hey, let's hold. Let's wait. Let's let this play out. There's nobody else where really got to go get for sure. Maybe we'll do that. I think what would be far more likely, we've seen this happen with restricted free agents over the years. Detroit wants Peyton Watson. They're going to go to the Nuggets and say, how do we make this a sign and trade? Where you're going to get something too. We're going to get them, and we don't have to play all these games of tying up cap space and all that other stuff. That's, I think, how it would be more likely to go down. I will say, I think, again, the Pistons, like I talked about with the Nuggets, they're going to be in the same boat. How do the playoffs go, right? Because if playoffs go well, let's say they make, at a minimum, let's say they're in a competitive Eastern Conference Finals. Maybe they don't make the finals, but it's competitive. You're going to feel a lot better about, all right, let's kind of run it back, right? We'll move a couple guys in and out, but let's bring most of our guys back. Let's say disaster strikes and they're bounced in the first round or non-competitive second round series, probably a lot more likely to say, hey, let's start moving some guys, right? Let's start moving on from a handful of these guys and really retooling this roster around Cunningham, Duren, Thompson, Holland, etc.
The Pistons are like a good place to do that as well, because Trajan Langdon has a history of, one, getting players that are available, two, not signing players to big deals, three, signing them to short deals. So like everybody's on Pistons right now, their offer is up either this season, at the end of this season, or next season, other than Cade and their rookie class going forward from that. So like getting a player like Peyton Watson, that'd be one of the bigger reaches of his reign, I suppose, but it could also be incredibly beneficial to them. A guy who defends and a guy who can shoot threes and a guy who can handle the ball, who plays a position of need with Tobias Harris entering, let's call it the twilight of his career, even though the dude plays like a stud and we love him out here. He's been huge for us. I got to give a shout out to OG because he pitched this idea at the beginning. He wants to know, this would be his path. And so I guess let's take your thoughts on it. Would be salary dump LeVert and Sasser. I think LeVert's making like 13 next year or something like that.
14, I think.
14.
Yeah, it's in range.
And then Sasser's pretty low. Only keep Duren on hold, then carry over 9 rotation players, 2 end of bench, 1 2-way, and new rookies. You have roughly 38.5 million in space minutes. You sign Duren and try to get Tobias on the room exception, which you alluded to was what, like 8-ish million?
Yeah, it'll be right around 9, I think.
Okay, well, 9 million, then fill out your roster and stay under the first apron. Does that sound like viable to you as like a Pistons solution? It would just really just require Tobias being like, yeah, I can take this dollar amount, which that there's so many players that like kind of fit into this range of how much are you actually worth? We don't want to pay guys of your value in the 20s, even like the high teens, even like Kevin Huerter, he's paid like 18 million, I think. This year's what his contract ending up. He's probably not going to make that next year, is my guess. But who's to say? How will it all go? And then you have another team like Oklahoma City, right, where they're about to get crazy expensive too, I imagine, because they have 3 max guys coming through. And they have all these picks, but they have all these roster spots open. So are they a team that you want to go after as far as like, hey, maybe we can offload somebody on your team like Jay Will, not Jay Lynn, not Jay Dub, but Jay Will, who's a like power forward,
big J Dub,
big J Dub. Is he another Razorback?
He is, yes.
Yeah, that I thought he was the other one I thought about. I remember seeing him in the tournament. Like, I like this guy's game, and now he's like stroking from 3. That's a player that can really fit the Pistons game as well on a cheaper deal because he's making 8 or 9 million next year, and they need to get off some money, no matter how it is. So I think a lot of people think they're going to like trade their picks, but really they kind of need those picks because those are cheap, controllable contracts. Do you see OKC potentially going a different route than trying to do something like that?
No, I mean, when they went out and got Isaiah Hartenstein a couple of years ago and paid him a ton of money, part of what they were paying him for is, hey, 2 years from now, when we have Holmgren and Williams on maxes, SGA is actually the 3rd highest paid Thunder player next year.
Crazy.
Just for the year until his new contract kicks in. But just the way it works out, it's all timing. But what I think they're gonna do is they paid Hardenstein 30 million and then like 28 million over the first year and then into the second year. And I think what their whole idea was, hey, then when we opt you out of your team option and we give you 15, remember when we overpaid you by about 10 million and 8 million? Now, okay, you already got it's almost like an upfront contract, and there's a lot of wink and a nod and trust that goes into that. And who knows? I mean, it's the whole what was Pat Riley's thing, the disease of more, right? Like if maybe they win another title and guys start to be like, hey, actually, it's cool, but I'd like to play. I'd like to start. Like you mentioned with Jay Will. I think guys like Aaron Wiggins isn't even playing right now. Aaron Wiggins would probably be in 25 other teams' rotations, at least. Might be the other 29 teams. He's a good player. And you said they've got more draft picks coming in. They have Nikola Topic, first rounder. Super awesome that he made it back from the injury and then from cancer. Absolutely incredible. And then you've got Thomas Sorber, who they drafted in the first round this past draft, then immediately got injured and isn't going to play this whole year. And you have 2 more picks at least coming in. In
Jared McCain now.
Jared McCain,
Jared McCain's, you got him in the fold. So you're sitting there looking at like, all right, something we'll have to give eventually, right? So that's team I've told people, like, if you need rotation player on a pretty good contract, I'd be calling the Thunder and just say, hey, let's, what do you need? And if I'm the Thunder, I do have to, at some point, it's like, I don't need a ton more picks. If you're going to offer me a real pick, great, let's go. So you're absolutely right. It's a great place to be in for the Pistons. I will say this too. You said you talk a lot about, no matter what a player is worth. there's also the matter of what can the player get,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes some guys they're not worth 25 or 30 million, but they can get 25 or 30 million because that's available to them in the market. And that's where like this summer, there's a handful of teams that are going to have quite a bit of cap space. Probably the Lakers, the Bulls, the Nets. We'll see with the Pistons. We'll see with the Hawks. The Hawks and Pistons are pretty much in the same boat as far as potential cap space. So if the Hawks and Pistons go over or stay over the cap rather and operate like that, now that's the Lakers. Well, they're clearly looking for, you got to come in, be a win now guy. Let's go. Then you've got the Bulls. They're kind of rebuilding. The Nets are still rebuilding, but the Nets have made noise of, we're going to try to get better because they don't control their pick and all that stuff. So that turns into, all right, now somebody has to get that money, right? Someone will. So that turns into a guy like Tobias Harris, where if you went in saying, all right, you know what, we're going to do all this and we're going to bring him back for $9 million, Tobias Harris would be like, that's cute, but the Pistons, or excuse me, the Nets just offered me another $20 million. So that's where we're going to go. So that becomes, it's all easier said than done, I guess is the best way to put that.
For sure. And I think if he got offered 20 million, then it would be goodbye, Harris at that point. It's like, get your money, like do your thing. And to your point about like how much money you can, there's how much you're worth, how much you can get. You're worth however much you can get, however much anyone values that is what you are worth in this. I don't like the idea of like what a player deserves as far as money goes, because I don't even trust like the most insane analysts to properly judge what sort of success rate a player really does bring to your team in a winning rate. Like when you look at like awards, like how people view MVPs, it's so heavily based on offense, right? Like who's the best offender, who's going in there. People constantly complain about Luka's like effort on defense and it's just like shot selection, but the stats are crazy. So he's constantly in this MVP conversation. Sometimes it contributes to winning, sometimes it doesn't. So like when you look at Asar Thompson, people are like, oh, we're not going to pay him that much because he doesn't have any offense. Look how this team performs when Asar's not on the court. It's a completely different thing. It's so hard to judge what a player's worth. So maybe the money varies. Maybe who knows what you're going to get paid, but you should have a pretty decent idea. And if you as a GM in Trajan Langdon's shoes are good at analyzing that and making the most out of your money, I mean, hell, he might have done a good job with Kevin Huerter when you really look at it for what that dude's bringing to this team right now. You got to be pretty happy with where this team's at. And I want to ask you guys right before I say that we should like and subscribe to the show. You're already here. Why not get in on it? Yeah. It's so easy. We have a silly time. Tell more than a friend. Tell a family member.
Yeah.
Go to the No Kings rally and be like, I heard this sick Pistons show. Y'all got to check it out. They don't believe in Kings except for the salary cap king, that being Keith Smith on the show. But maybe you're more the cap whisperer than a king. We'll put it in there. We don't want no royalty associated in this podcast. But what I want to know between these two guys. Oh, and real quick, OG says, I disagree. I didn't think Ayton was worth a max at the time, and he never lived up to that contract. He wasn't worth the max just because he got it. Well, the Suns sure thought he was worth that, right?
Well, remember they matched an offer sheet from the Pacers. So the Suns were like, we got to keep him. So, and that's, again, that's if you want to get a restricted free agent, you have to be willing to overpay them, because otherwise anything that's fair, their team's probably going to be like, no, we'll just keep them. Like, why would we let them go unless you were really stuck with that? I want to, you said one thing that I do want to respond to real quick, because I think it was really good. This is my world, right? I live in these contract numbers and cap and all that stuff. It's still like people think I'm a soulless transaction robot. And there are times when I do turn that part of me on because I have to do what I do. Sometimes it can't be as much, about like, how does it feel and those kind of things. But I root for the players to get as much money as they can. Whenever I mention a bad contract, it's in terms of the team. If no player gets a bad contract, unless it would be, Cade Cunningham signs for the minimum, then be like, what were you doing? Like, that's a bad contract for you. So I never, hold those against the player or the agent. Go get what you can get. You can only play basketball for so long. I mean, it's getting to be longer if you're good, but you're not going to be out there for 30. I used to say 20. Now we might have to start reframing that for the best guys a little.
Wow.
But you're not going to be out there for 30 years playing professional basketball. So if you can go get money, and otherwise, boy, it goes to billionaire owners who already are rich. Like, I don't, I mean, good for them. Great. Like, cool. But, that's, I'm never going to complain when a player gets paid. Like that. It's, I may analyze it as that's an overpay, but I'm still happy for the player at the end of the day. And for me, it's all about the players. Where I switched, it's probably about 5 years ago. I used to always say well-deserved. And then somebody be like, who deserves $100 million contract? So I've switched that phrasing now in my own mind to well-earned. Like, it's a well-earned contract. Yeah. So
you heard it.
That might be semantics, but
it's an important distinction. Yeah.
But yeah, you heard it here first. Keith Smith, pro Uncle Dennis, getting that money for Kawhi in aspiration. Get that money.
Aggregate it.
Go get that money however you can get it.
Pretty wild.
Homer's dime, baby.